Here it is. Best intro ever. Hey everybody, how we doing
Hello.
tonight? I'm Troy. This is Nick. This is our show. We're Soulkin. Well, all of us are Soulkin, but this is the anyway best intro ever.
No, exactly that. We all are sulking together. We all have souls. Well, hopefully all of us at least. I don't know.
Yeah. So, in short, this show's all about, we're talking about spirituality, politics, science, just about everything, and kind of just trying to weave it all together into somehow understand it all. And, we're not trying to be experts in everything, but we feel we have something to add to the conversation. And the conversation we wanted to chime in today, we were watching TimcastIRL last night. And they started talking about some of the stuff they do about spirituality and aliens and drugs and stuff. Like, have you tried DMT? Just joking.
Why did that take me a second? God. Yeah.
It's a joke.
Okay, Joe.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to chime in on some of the stuff that they were, saying, because I mean, like, Tim is really great because he spends so much time reading the news and understanding the different sources, and he sees the biases and such like that. But he's not a spiritual guy. And then you had Elijah Schaefer, and I'm not sure who the other guy is, but they're admittedly Christians, and Christianity has some great stuff and some great perspectives, but it's limited. And with everything, we're all limited beings. We can't know everything. So, but if you can take all the pieces of all the different perspectives and somehow merge them together, which we're kind of trying to do in this show, you get a better sense of reality, because it takes more than just one perspective to lead your life, because you're not just living from one point, you're moving throughout time and space to be a different person, and you have to do different things and adapt. That's part of who we are. And anyway, part of the reason we're doing this show is I feel that there's a change in collective consciousness where, people are starting to actually be influenced by spirituality and opening up to these things. But you have all these people who are really disconnected, from themselves and from the spirituality that they're claiming themselves to have, that they kind of, they fall in what we call spiritual ego traps. How long does, it's, people get caught up in these different belief systems that end up limiting them, and people are starting to question that. And I think spirituality, or drugs or different life experiences has caused them to look at life in a different way and think about things differently. And anyway, I just think I wanted to chime in on a couple of things they were saying. I mean, what were some of your takeaways from the conversation last night that they had?
Well, just going off what you were saying with the stuff related to spirituality and stuff, like, yeah, I think, it's a natural part of human beings in our brain to kind of like seek out that kind of, that maybe call it spiritual structure or just structure in general, something to explain the world, something to give us definition, purpose, and like meaning, and to connect us in a way. And like, they're all stories, obviously, that are people's attempt to try and do that. And like, I think each one does have a point, but I think now you're right. I think now it's like those stories are kind of, they're not good enough, I guess. And like, they're, to quote like Eric Weinstein, like he talks about how the government and stuff needs to give us a better lie. Well, like a better lie, like if they're gonna lie to us, they need to give us a better lie. They need to treat us like that we're smarter. Well, I think that's like the same idea with spirituality, where like all this religions kind of, and even like New Age stuff, like, it doesn't fully, it's not satisfying enough. Like we've reached like this point where we need to like have a better lie, which I say that in a kind of cheeky way, but it's like a better story to explain like us and all the things that spirituality are trying to explain. And like, people are just kind of, that's why there's so many offshoots now in like modern times, where it's just like everyone has their own like their own individual like thing that they think is the right religion. Like, you see that everyone, whether it's a classic religion or a more like modern version of spirituality, or like Satanism, even, like people, they're all kind of offshooting off into their own like world of spirituality, and that's good. That's part of the purpose. But I don't know. As long as we allow others to have their own thing, and not like, it's like this idea of religions has been so much like conformity, like everyone has to be the same, and I think that attitude has to change. Like, and it is changing in culture already. I mean, even in the past like 50, 100, couple hundred years, but like it has to really radically shift though. Like people have to not expect others to believe exactly the same as them, because like from like a just psychological standpoint, like from astrology, like no one sees the world exactly the same as you do, and that like every single person has like a slightly different lens of how they experience the world, how they like take things in emotionally, mentally, and stuff, physically. And so like we can't expect others to like conform to the exact version of spirituality or that works for us or whatever, I guess. And so like, working on a world that like allows for that, but also we can teach and learn from each other. That's not the point. It's not about like limiting yourself. So that's like my big thing on that, is like like when you're talking about like a shift, a cultural shift and stuff, and like a spiritual cultural shift, I think, we all have our own idea of like what's the right one for us, or like what it even is for us or not. And like even, atheism, like the religion of science, quote unquote, of like just like that whole thing. And so just, anyways, that's, I'm kind of just circling back my point, but that's my main point there.
And to me, that really comes down to the difference between spirituality and religion, is because spirituality is basically, in general, knowing that there's more than a physical reality and opening up to whatever possibilities that is. Where religion is more like, this is the way you think about the non-physical. Where it's more, and not all of them are as rigid as others, but it's just... It's, I mean, but it comes from the Greek, Latin, from many, there is one. Which from one sense you could always say that, oh, we're all one together within the oneness of all creation, but also at the same time is, it's, some people say that that's more of a Greek way of saying conformity, that you're trying to unify everybody together into one belief structure. And I get that, to a certain degree. When you think you know something, you want other people to know it as truth, especially if you've experienced it as truth, And, and you can rely on that truth in your life. Well, I definitely see how people want to share that, and especially how Christianity has gotten that way, and a lot of people have that mentality. But it's that whole thing between, authoritarian and libertarianism is, are you trying to push your ideas onto somebody, or do you allow them to have their own path and figure out their own thing? And I think that's the biggest difference between these different spiritual paths and these different religions, and also just in general the difference between spiritual paths and the difference between religious paths, because most
Yeah.
religious paths are within a paradigm of pre-established spirituality, you know, and where, you know, if you're on your own spiritual path, it's kind of you're defining it yourself, and you're experiencing it for yourself. You might exist in larger communities, but the real power is within yourself, and that's where I really agree with, because it's you are the fulcrum in your own life. You are the here and now is where the power of your focus is. I mean, you have a different here and now for each point of focus, you know, so
Which is, yeah, you're right. Every individual person. Yeah. You're 100% right. Well, that's a cool way of putting it, because yeah, each person has their. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
and in
Just
each
to add to that.
moment, because it's like
Yeah.
my leverage point for right now is not 10 years ago or 10 years in the future or even minutes from now or minutes ago. It's right now, you know,
That's
and
awesome. Yeah.
well, and it's also one of those things is trying to develop habits when you're saying stuff. The more that you can try to be like, oh, that's a problem, I can deal with it right now, and it only takes you a minute or two. Developing those kind of habits, forming to instantly solve things, that now is the best time to solve that problem. Once you start having that mentality, I think it rolls out in an attitude and the way you approach life, and your in not just your physiological psyche, but your body also is training for that way too. Because, you know, I feel that, you know, in both camps, the non-spiritual people don't account for the spiritual reality, so they're ignoring all of these attributes of themselves that are there to help them. And I think that spiritual people do the same thing with their physical reality. They want to just kind of escape their body too much, and they forget that there is billions of years of evolution in our bodies that are teaching us. We have genetic power in us. You know, it's our own evolution is not just, or I should say our own gene code is not just, it's not just pure evolution of what has come before us, but part of that is actually what is imprinted on us with our soul as we incarnate. So it's like we have to, I mean, like, that's part of the reason why you look at or like pictures of people who have incarnated, you know, or whatever, multiple times, or that's the assumption, where you see pictures of people that are like doppelgangers from hundreds of years apart, you know, who are clearly different people who live different lives. You know, we're not talking vampires here or anything like that.
No. No. Do you know the guy? What's his name? I think it's David Wilcox.
Yep.
He thinks that he thinks that he's Edgar Casey, like the reincarnation of Edgar Casey, because they have like similar. It's just the same idea. That's one example that came to mind. Yeah, you know that guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was heavy into David Wilcox for a while. So
oh yeah, we all go through it, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, my only criticism about him is that he's just not as accurate as he would like to be with some of his predictions.
Or he thinks he is, yeah. Well, I'm not big on future predictions, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, predictions are just asking for trouble, and also it's just like, you know, it's as much as you can say, oh, I think it's likely that something like this is going to happen, is much different than saying like the entire elite cabal is going to be taken down within days, dude. Mass arrests. You know how many times I've heard mass arrests? Mass arrests are happening.
I know. But what you just said is what predicting the future is probabilities. That's all it is looking at what is more likely and less likely to happen, and that's it. But at the same time, you can't predict. All you can do is say like there's probabilities of certain things, less or more. That's it. And that's even like with astrology, with like any kind of psychics. That's my big thing with that, is it's not about this will definitively happen. I think that people really need to understand that, because like, especially as we go forward with the amount of information that people are bombarded with, like there's so much bullshit, and including in like what you're talking about, like looking at the future in different ways. So I just think, it's purely about looking at the probabilities of something. That's the only part that's true about it. Just to confirm what you were saying. I think, you're 100% right.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
And the only other thing is that I think that sometimes it's that Freudian slip where it's like it's easiest to hide the lie out there in front. So it's easiest to like if people how do I put it? Um so it's like with all of this aliens and such like that. I'm bringing it back to home instead of using a more out there analogy. Uh all of this stuff, is crazy by a lot of normal senses, and you have to put, and to be honest, everything we're talking about here is heavy degree of skepticism for the most part, because we're not 100% sure on this. We're not going to like die on these hills, that we're talking about, because some of this stuff is really out there and I have no evidence for this. But I've seen enough interviews, I've watched enough stuff that this stuff seems probable, you know? And it's like, what's the easiest way to hide a truth out in public is make it so that only crazy people would think that it's true, you know? And
Actually, yeah, yeah.
and that's what a lot of our cultural conditioning is to a lot of degrees. But it's like I'm somebody who I actually think aliens have existed and have come, and humans have interacted with them in different ways. But I mean, I don't have evidence. I can't tell you exactly how that's happened, but I've heard enough stories from enough experts in enough things that, even if 10% of them, 5% of them are even close to true, there still means that we're having alien interactions, and also interdimensional being interactions with different governments. I mean, and that's one thing, like they were talking in the show last night, is like the Nazis were really into occult stuff. They wanted to communicate with aliens and such like this. And some people say that they interacted with the Anunnaki or heard descriptions of the Anunnaki, which said that they were tall blondes with blue eyes. And so then that's part of the reason why they said, oh, look, we're tall, blonde, and blue eyes too. Look, we're special. Can you give us special alien technology?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, it's just kind of like some of the crazy stuff that goes around about these different topics. But I mean,
Well, with the oh, go ahead.
well, I mean, it's easy to get really deep in these topics, but it's also easy to just discard them all as bullshit. But I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle, that there's a lot we can learn from these, and if we take some of these things out to the general, then we can actually learn a lot, instead of being like, oh, look, this is what the Nazis did, but they're like, okay, well, what was their different control strategies? What was their motivation for control? What was their outcomes? What was their, and their mindsets? And anyway, I mean, it's an interesting tangent.
Well, what would you think about? I mean, so I have a lot to say to that, because I personally, I don't believe in aliens in like a literal sense, personally. Only because I have not seen enough proof in the similar way where
planets that give us all that energy that shapes our personality.
Well, nothing, because I mean, I'm not
joking.
Dismissing the idea. I just haven't seen, like, the evidence that I have seen, like, it's all probability, it's all potentiality, and I'm not dismissing that at all. I'm not one of those people who thinks like Earth is like magically special. I'm just saying, until I see like either a UFO with my own eyes or see some government evidence that really convinces me. That's all I'm saying. Like, only because even the thing, like the whole idea that there must be life on an X number of planets just based on probability, well, to me that's like, it's still a theory until I have more concrete evidence. That's all. So I'm not like dismissing the idea at all. I'm not trying to like, because I've seen, I do think that the potential is there, but until I do, then I'm kind of, for me, I focus more on the side of it where it's, and I don't 100% believe this, but I think it's an important idea. It's what Carl Jung brought up about how, like, coincidentally, like, with the idea of the death of God, like Nietzsche and the whole idea in culture, the death of God in culture, and like, the transition from the Age of Enlightenment over, into the Industrial Age, basically up to modern culture now. It's like, we, in human beings, there's a natural part of us that wants to see, I don't know what it is, like something above, 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 something above us. And so like with the death of God, coincided with this like boom in aliens and UFOs and like kind of this. And he, I'll look for the article. I'll try to post it on the Solkin page, Facebook page. But it's, Carl Jung talks about it, and like, this is back like in the first half of the 1900s, and so it's not, I think it's. I'm not 100% on this idea, but I think there's something to it where, because a lot of people, when they talk about aliens and stuff, it's like a replacement for, and this is what you were talking about, like, or I don't know if you brought it up, but the idea between, angels and demons versus aliens, and like how in mythology and stuff. Oh, okay, that was before we got like, with like the Nazis and stuff, they saw what you said, the Anunnaki, right? Like, to me, what if that was just a myth? Like, what if that was just a story that people wrote about those people? Just like we talk about, the myths in like Greek mythology or whatever. Like, what if, and so then anyways, what do you think? I mean, what do you think about that? Because like, to me, a lot of the stories, especially from ancient times, like ancient aliens, that whole thing, a lot of them are, to me, I see them as myths or like stories, just in the same way that like, religious texts, in the same way as like mythology. So I mean, what do you
there's two
think about
different
that?
ways to look at these stories, because there's two levels of truth. One is, did they actually happen, and then one is, are there significant enough people believing that this is true and acting as if it's true?
That's a valid point, because that's a valid
so
thing.
I'm saying, if like, so let's just say all of this is just wrong, but if there's enough people like the Nazis did, they believed in these occult things, and there's reports coming out of China that apparently that they're into this stuff too, which I believe it from the way that they run their country. China and Censored apparently had an episode about that. Go ahead.
Well, just the Nazis, I mean, they got a lot of power. I mean, I don't know where it all was from, but they got a lot of power real quick, and it seems like China's doing the same. So that's obviously just my own conjecture and just kind of my own thing, but there's something interesting about that, where the fuck did they get all this power all of a sudden, and it's just like, I'm not saying they tapped into some like demon magic, but I'm just saying it.
Oh yeah.
There's something interesting, just to kind of. Anyways, please continue. That's interesting, like.
But it's also one of those things, is if you're even if you're an interdimensional whatever, or any of these entities, you could easily be like, hey, here's a couple math equations, or something like that. It's like, if you're playing these things out, it's like, it doesn't take that much to put someone ahead, because it's like it's being able to give somebody a cheat code, or being able to simply say, hey, make sure you duck, or bring some water. Like, sometimes the smallest amount of preparation can lead you through something like that.
So you think the guy who invented the atom bomb, he was getting some? I mean, that sounds like some demonic shit right there. I'm sorry, I'm being a little shit. I mean, that's not a funny thing to laugh about the atom bombs, but I'm just saying, like, to get that kind of power.
No laughter.
Yeah,
we're not but it's just like
to
have fun.
Yeah, no, but just like, think about that. Like, I mean, something as powerful as that. I mean, obviously the guy was a scientific genius too. But like, if we're talking about like the idea of like, if I understand you correctly, like, it might just be like an equation you get in your head that then leads to massive destruction and killing and massive power and whatever. So is that kind of a similar? If that's like maybe just an exaggerated example of what you're saying, or no?
I mean, potentially.
I can be wrong.
But yeah. I mean, that kind of ties into one of the other things like they were talking about in the show, is like, why does it only seem to be angels and demons? Why does there not seem to be, but it's like, if you look at other, especially polytheistic religions, they do have tracer entities out there and such like that.
No, yeah, it's a wide spectrum. Even the good do bad things, the bad do good things. You're right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But at
there's
the same time,
black and white.
Yeah. I mean, it generally comes down to the service to self or service to others. And this is where you really have to take the spiritual perspective to understand this, because essentially we're all source, God source, that is pure energy, that is fractalized in different geometric shapes going down, and we're living in the tiniest little end of a petal. essentially, you know, but we're all a part of God. So when you understand that and you are connected with source and you're connected with your higher self, which is connected with its higher self all the way to source, that is your direct connection. So when you recognize that, you're not going to go outside of yourself for energy. You're not going to be taking from others. You're not going to be energy vampiristic, you know. You're not going to be taking energy from others. So it's different. And when you understand that, you're basically going to be neutral, or you're going to be positive for the most part, you know. So the only other people who are not conforming to that way or that kind of general existence are people who have aligned themselves so that they don't have to, and it's by choice that they did this. I mean, except for I guess the people who incarnated into those things, but that gets into a higher conversation. But you generally have it falls into those same categories because they basically inverted part of their gene code so that they wouldn't have to be held to the same requirements as everybody else, so that they could do whatever they want, you know. And they basically then, in order to sustain themselves, because they're disconnected, they have to take energy from others. And so you have these demonic beings which will portray themselves as benevolent beings, but actually, you know, just take advantage of you. And that's what you have in different spiritual traditions and different you know, they were talking about drug trips. You can have a drug trip, you know, and it'll make you susceptible, or potentially.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So with that, so it's like these quote demonic entities, they work through other people. Is that what you mean? Like they work, or do you think it's like they come into your psyche, so to speak, like where whatever that is, like your psyche? Because I guess for me, you know, human beings. Do you think human beings also, you know, quote, drain energy from other human beings too? Do you think that like we, like?
Yeah,
because like I agree with you. I think we each have we have like, you know, our 100% of energy every day. You know, mental, emotional, physical, all that spiritual energy every day, and like little things drain that, including like our own thoughts, our own feelings. You know, running a mile, but also then obviously what you're talking about, which is like. Could you elaborate, I guess, on that? Like maybe in just the difference or just the connection between how people drain each other's energy, and also then what the kind of the energy, the demon side of it too.
Well, I mean, as I don't have the best spiritual sight, you know, I see a little bit, but you know, from what I hear from other people's explanation, which resonates with my intuition, because I mainly like feel things with my intuition. But essentially, how do I put it this way? So we have electromagnetic fields going around our bodies, you know, and which is kind of a way to describe our auras. So you have these electromagnetic fields going around us, and depending on your emotion state and what you're thinking of, its angle is going to change. So it could be, so if you're looking right here, it could be arcing up like this, or it could be arcing like this, you know. So you have all these different shapes of how it can arc. Like if you've ever done any of those little stencil things where you get all these patterns.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so each one you get a different shape. So just imagine like a snowflake. So every time you're thinking or feeling something, it's a different shape. Now, if your shape of your field, so to speak, is lining up with the person you're interacting with, well, if you're hitting on the right, if you're hitting like, you know, positive, negative, or whatever, and you're hitting correctly, not that I could tell you exactly what that is, but when it's hitting correctly, you're actually kind of like, you're creating energy, because when you're like when you're with friends and everything's going fine and you're just flying high, you guys, everybody walks out of there energized and they're charged, you know. And that's because you're literally, your energy fields are sparking off of each other. You're literally, you know, it's like like how an AC motor works is if you have a spinning magnet in an electrical field, you're going to generate current, and you have a spinning current going around you, or a spinning electrical field spinning around you, and when it's interacting with another electrical field, essentially, it's generating current, to your magnetic center, more or less.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I'm just learning right now. Yeah.
And then just invert that a little bit, and then that's going to be, and then so just think about it this way, that now you're interacting with somebody and you're like, I'm so enjoying myself. This is so great. This is so great. This is so great. And you're sparking and the other person's not. So, it's, and this is where it comes into one of those things where you're not necessarily always taking energy from somebody just to be exhausting somebody. Because the thing is, if you're getting into crazy spiritual stuff, and I lean in this direction, is that you have to surrender your energy. They can't just take it from you,
Okay.
So if you're,
whether it's conscious or unconscious, from an unconscious place too. Like, you don't have to be consciously aware that you're surrendering your energy.
Absolutely, because most of
it
it is
does
unconscious.
Yeah. Okay.
If we, I mean, that's what controls our breathing and all our dreams, and I mean, all of we would not get
most of our emotional reactions. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I mean, well, and I mean, it's like shout out to our good old Brett Weinstein. He talks about, and he had who was he talking about? I can't remember who he was arguing with, but it was basically talking about how free will doesn't exist, and but Eric Weinstein was like, no, I hear your argument, but the thing is that free will exists. It's just much smaller than we think it is. We have so much more autonomic. Well, Brett, but this time.
Oh, which one? Oh, who said what? Oh, okay, never mind. Oh, he was saying that. Never mind. I thought you said. Oh, okay.
Well,
never mind.
It's one of them. You give credit to one
I
of the
think
brains.
I think it's free will. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying team free will exists. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, it's just, let me put it this way. A lot of our autonomic thoughts get construed as if they were conscious when they're actually habits of thought.
Yeah.
So we delude ourselves to how much power we have in certain ways, but we're just kind of overinflating it in certain ways.
Yeah, that's fine. I get that. I get the idea that it's not just free will at all. I think there are so much that influences us and controls us that we have no control over. But I think that the idea that it's like all or nothing, or that free will does not exist at all, I don't agree with. But I do agree with that if it's like 80-20, or 90-10, I think
yeah.
On the concept of free will, and so I was like, oh shit, Team Eric, but never mind. I misunderstood.
I love all this.
Is it doing? What's it doing now? Well, hang on the concept of free will, and so I was like, oh shit, Team Eric, but never mind. I misunderstood. Is it working?
Oh yeah. Well, no, Brett
is it doing? What's it doing now?
It's just wigging out. But yeah, Brett Weinstein was arguing for. He was arguing for free will. Oh,
my bad. I had that backwards then. Yeah, gotcha. And he would know. He's a freaking biologist.
Just bugging out, and
it is. Yeah, are we? Well, you can talk, I guess. And he would know. He's a freaking biologist.
Yeah. Well, and because Brett's whole thing is we have to understand our biology so that it doesn't control us. Yeah. Yeah. We got to get our internet. I got to get my internet fixed.
It's like stuck on a super creepy face. Yeah.
Yeah, it just started frames there. So
yeah, Skype could be Skype too.
Yeah, I'm still gonna blame my internet. I'm just gonna say that one of my roommates started using the internet and it's causing interference now.
Well, that's still almost an hour. Oh, open up the OBS stats thing and look at it while you're live.
Yeah,
I know
but we're
it's
at
live. This
35
isn't
minutes.
what you're supposed to be doing, but open up the OBS stats thing and look at it window while you're live. I know it's live and this isn't what you're supposed to be doing, but
I'm watching it right now, and yeah, it's my internet, just like I thought it was.
Is it? Okay, so it's the network. Okay.
Yeah, yes, but you know, we might be able to fix that with the Wi-Fi, but I mean, switching to Ethernet. But we should probably stop streaming if we're going to keep talking about this.
Whatever. People don't lower the bitrate. But anyways.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll have to do that if we stop streaming. But it was doing fine before. But yeah. So I guess
But anyways.
I mean, we could keep going, or do you want to try to keep going, or do you just want to call it?
You can try for like another 20 minutes or something. I'm cool with that.
Well, I guess that answers it for me, because I can't hear you, and I see you wiggling your lips.
Yeah. Try for like another 20 minutes or something. Cool with that.
Okay.
Damn it.
Okay. Well, you know, if
that's okay.
Thank you for the few people who were watching us live, and if you're watching us on replay still, I'll probably.
Damn it.
Yeah, well, thanks for tuning in to our technical difficulties.
That's okay.
And I guess we'll keep the show short this time, and we'll see you next time.
That's what
we're trying to do Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 Pacific time, which should be what is that, 10:30 Eastern time?
That's what we're calling. Yeah, we'll just.
Yeah, and then Sundays at 2 Eastern time, 5 no, that's 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. So yeah, tune us in. We're trying to do it 3 shows a week and talk about a little bit about everything. Thanks for tuning in, and we should get these technical difficulties figured out pretty soon.
Awesome.
Right, peace.
Cheers. Have a good night. Peace.